turn to Mr. Soundarajan. Mr. Soundarajan almost revolutionized this industry by bringing integration. If when you write your biography or whenever anything will be written about you, I think making integration a success and a kind of a change which overtook this industry and captured huge amount of value, you will always be remembered. But I know you for more than 2.5 decades, and I have seen both you brothers innovating on the back end as well as the consumer side. And I remember that you were the first ones to try and brand live chicken because you got a new breed into India and you really wanted to brand live chicken. Never heard of, never even thought, and marketing people like me, I think it was a sacrilege to try and brand something like this. I would like to ask you about your experiences, live bird branding, what you did at the shops, what you did with the consumer, and was it a success, and what were your learnings from it?
Initially, in about 20 years back, we tried with our brand as a franchisee stores we initiated from about 150 stores that time we established. Experiences initially for 6 months to 1 year is good. Then after we are able to see the loyalty of the franchisees. Because of the loyalty of the franchisees, this model is failed because they used to source from the various sources and they used to keep it in the store. The chicken is the live chicken, we are unable to differentiate by color or by brand or anything. Due to that, after that we given it up that model in the live chicken side. Then we thought about how to do the branding in the live chicken itself, that we tried in the various models, but nothing is succeeded. Then finally we thought about let the brand name can be established whether we are selling our chicken or others' chicken. Initially we started with our chicken to sell, but really it's not happened. But we given in about 25,000 stores, we given up the boards and all. Due to that we got a good visibility. But at the same time, whether is it translated into the business, I can't say it's happened.
I think I wanted you to talk about when you tried to go to the consumer through the yield model, trade as well as consumer. So what was your experience in that? And what would you do to demonstrate that? And what was the reaction? And what was the outcome?
Initially, 2000, 2001, we went into the other breed. That breed is given a very good yield comparing with the existing breeds. It used to give about 2 to 3% of the additional yield what we've seen. That time the chicken is sold as a whole chicken. It's not sold as the portions also. The combination of the both yield and selling as a half kilo or 50 grams or 1 kilo chicken like that. Otherwise, every consumer, they should have the full chicken means the money, the total overall the money they used to have more. But if they are taking the half a kilo, just 1/3 of the money is enough. Every day also they can consume. We put up the marketing team across India. We put it in wherever we are. Then we marketed well. We done a lot of demonstration in the stores. Due to that, the whole chicken market we are able to transfer towards a portion of the sales. The dressed chicken, they can get it as a 50 grams or 500 grams. Who is the 2 people in the house, they will take 500 grams of chicken. That's the way we translate it. Now that model is predominantly everywhere across India, it's prevalent now.
Thank you, sir. Now we move to dairy, the biggest sector in the animal protein industry, and something which the government is also obsessed about. And rightly so, at one time we had so much of protein insecurity and deficiency that it was the right thing to do. We opened up this sector for private sector about 20 years ago, and most of the growth in processing, value addition has been driven by private sector in last 2 decades. This is also an industry where public money competes with private money because cooperatives don't have to make profits and private sector cannot survive without it. So I think this is a very interesting space. Now, just to make the conversation more interesting, I have Mr. Bhupinder Suri. He is Managing Director, CEO of Creamline Dairy, which is a subsidiary of Godrej. It was our first foray in the milk industry about 5-6 years ago. Mr. Suri has spent more than 2 decades in food in one of the most profitable multinationals called Coke. And then we got him into the milk business, and you all want to know what hit him. I would ask him, what are the differences between these two industries? How does he see the size and how evolution will happen? So some opening words on that.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the CLFMA team to have me here. It's been a very interesting conversation, listening to very inspiring discussions across poultry, shrimp. Coming to the dairy industry, the point which BSY you're asking, which is Coke versus dairy. So no, this is the margin and the volume. So the scale is what hits you when you come to the milk industry. You know, the whole terminology which used to be cases per month became liters, lakh liters per day. So the whole discussion is how many lakh liters per day do you do of, so just changes the dynamic completely. And, something which is talk about branding. The large part of it is all about one side is scale with very low margin, and one side is, branding with profitability. So, that's a pretty interesting piece, when you try to match these two industries. So that's one thing which I saw. The other thing which I feel is that on one side, there is a well-entrenched industry, like a red ocean. Everybody has milk. And the big part in that industry is where you have to now grow the value-added part of it. Something very similar to which Dan was talking to, which was we need to move towards value-added. If you look at the entire percentage of value-added in India in milk industry, it's about 28 to 30%. Whereas when you look at the global number, I'm not even talking about developed market number, the global number is 55 to 60%. So there's a big journey out there into value-added products, and that's where I think the private players will play in. And that's where, when I look at what I did in Coke and what I'm now doing in dairy, the whole, the idea of the private players in the dairy segment is to somehow grow the value-added category. And when I say the value-added category, there's a range in the value-added category. There are the well-entrenched categories like ghee, like paneer, and many of these kind of well-entrenched categories. And then there are the new ones like whey drinks and many more new stuff which is coming up. So I think in both these areas, there's a massive scope in India to invest behind it and grow in that space. So that's, I think, my quick learnings from Coke to here.
So Manoj, I'll come back to you because I just wanted to give you some time to think. You're such a solvent industry. Your profitabilities are so high. All the players have got scale, and you just ignore the domestic sector. So I just want to know why such apathy.
Sir, I think this is one of the most important questions you ask, so thanks for that. But let me tell you the history of shrimp farming a little bit, because till Vanami came, from 1988 to 2010, we are out and out monodon country, and we have never ever to produce more than 60 to 75,000 ton. So in this 20 years, the industry has hauled to that limited infrastructure, whether it's a feed mill, whether it's a processing, and all was around 75,000 ton. Then the great Tarun Sridhar sir is sitting there during his tenure. Everybody knocked the door to bring the exotic species Vanami, which was, can say that it was like a broiler to the poultry industry, the desi versus the broiler. Then what happened in 2010, sir? When Vanami came, we were having 80,000 hectares of ponds. And we were failure because of the genetic issues, because of the lack of good bush stock, and there is a white spot disease which came in 1997 when we imported some seeds from Thailand. So that has halted the industry, and then suddenly Vanami came and people stocked Vanami because of the disease-free seed. And within no time, almost the production got double in 2011. So I remember people were throwing the shrimp on the road because not the lack of the market, because lack of the infrastructure, even the lack of ice plant, even the ice was not able to get it in the time. Then yesterday I had a good discussion with Mr. Bhave and Tarun sir, and then we said we were so busy in doing the backward integration that production was increasing. So we built on hatcheries, we built on feed mills, we built on infrastructure, and You are such a seasoned campaigner, you know to put up a feed mill, it will take at least 2.5 years. To put up a hatchery, it will take 2 years. So 2011 to 16, I'm thinking the whole industry was busy for backward integration. But here, as an expert, I will say that being a farmer, not an expert, being a farmer, so I'll say that yes, we do fail to study the rise and fall of Vanami in Vietnam, Thailand, that everywhere where Vanami has been introduced, there was a very sharp curve and then there is a fall. So we have had a Vanami tsunami. In 5 years, India has gone from 100,000 ton to 1 million ton, and we were all busy. But now happened suddenly, COVID came, and it was big a shocker to each and every industry. I think whole gamut of life has been affected with COVID. In COVID, when there was a lockdown and nothing exports moving, now industry has realized a sudden shock, and then, and you know, we have little tendency, and sorry to say that, जब प्यास लगेगी तभी हम कुआं खोदते हैं. So we never have a backup plan or an additional well when one well is giving you so much water. So that was the mistake. But I think the people are very smart, resilient, and I'm a very optimistic person. From nowhere, from 1 acre, I have developed like 70,000 acres, and so much employment has been created. But now we have a strength, we have science. I think the science is so strong that wherever there is a water and soil, shrimp and fishes can be grown. So I think from CLFMA, from this forum, I urge that all the industry people, especially, as you say, the top players, because it's very difficult to expect something from the farmer in India, whether it's an agriculture or the poultry or the dairy. It has to come from the feed millers or the top players. So I think I urged people that this is a very right time to invest in domestic market. And when 150,000, 15 million, 150 lakh tons of fish can be sold, why not few lakhs of shrimp? But a proper strategy has to be framed. And I think I'm very inspired with NEC or Amul movement in India. And we have such a huge examples in front of them. And I think very soon, I think, sir, the industry will understand this difficulty, and hope we will win soon all the situation. Hope for the best.
Thank you, Manoj. Dan, we are at a cusp of a change in India. So if we put the data together, then from 2000 to 2015, the growth in processing industry was low single digit, 5-6%. And then suddenly we saw 2015 onwards, there was a plethora of processing plants which have come. Now, the basic premise of processing plants, the basic premise of processing plant was that not driven by consumer, it was driven by escaping volatility of the live bird market. So, seeing the evolution of the markets in West, that beyond a certain point, everything starts becoming a commodity. So I wanted your views on that, that are we escaping volatility and margin pressures by getting into processing, and what we should do more to make sure that that also does not become a no-go space in next 5 to 10 years here?
That's a great question. I think, you know, the evolution into the processing plants, I've seen value created, okay, number one. Number two, I think branding is extremely important. So that linkage, and I can use an example in the egg laying industry, and I'll come back to the processing on the broilers side of things. But if you go and you Google again, if you look up an Eggland's Best, okay, Eggland's Best is a brand of eggs that was developed around the health consciousness of the consumer. It was very specific into the nutritional components of what that marketing group was requiring of actually all the integrators. The large egg-laying integrators became a customer from a production standpoint of producing those eggs for a branded Eggland's Best that has now become probably the #1 purchased shell egg in the United States. My wife has extreme brand loyalty to it. She will go and pick that up. But the system created that ability to build that brand, to create that convenience, and actually it's sold probably at $2 to $3 a dozen premium to what the generics are. So the power of branding, I think, is very important on who gets creative and how they do it. when you look at the escape from the whole egg to the further processing, I know that when you're able to further process those birds, you can package them to customer specifications based on what their needs are. What's happened over time is that the consumer's buying desires to go in a plant when you have the ability to cut it up in many different ways, you add value. Now, how do you capture that value with the consumer? I think over time, consumers want to go in and have a good buying experience, but they want to pick up packaged goods. They want to go in, they want to go out. If they want a package of all just drumsticks, they'll get that. If they want boneless, skinless breasts, they'll pick those things up. But they will go for the brand and the quality of who they're looking for. And what's happened over time is that you're now getting into different aspects of organic, of different aspects of how the animals are produced, what the consumers are looking for. So, you know, the further processing, in my opinion, will add value. I think I'll get back into the comments around how those plants are run and the cost efficiency of them to drive the profitability, because nothing is sustainable without profitability. And I do think that the facilities themselves have figured out how to reuse water through the system. They've figured out how to capture the offal and actually turn that back into a feed ingredient coming back into the animals. So all those aspects in the processing plant and the further processing are going to create a customer experience. So certainly there's going to be areas where you're going to be into a price mechanism, but brands, in my opinion, will differentiate you and continue to differentiate at the customer level.
Thank you. Why, continuing with somebody who has experimented more and more in this industry, Mr. Soundarajan, you were the first person to get into a joint venture in processing with a Saudi Arabian company called Supreme. And that was a very bold step at that time because there were a few processing plants which were not doing well. And it was not considered an industry which can yield the desired result. So we all thought that it is a bold decision of yours. So can you take us through the thought process, what you envisaged, what it eventually became, what has been your experience in past so many decades, because that joint venture did not work. I think this will definitely enlighten people who are thinking of going, and if it is possible to avoid certain pitfalls in the start of the journey, it will go a long way.
Good. In year 2000, 2001, we thought about going for the processing unit. The time I came to Godrej also, we both of us, we met Mr. Adi Godrej also to, why you put in the chicken processing plant? We queried that. That time, the basic calculation is that Middle East is one of the biggest market, but from any other markets, it's coming at around $300 is the transportation cost. From India, it's going to be around $80 to $90. So about $200, we will get the advantage of the logistics alone. Then second thing, what I can, the neighbor 20 years of the past, dollar-wise, INR we calculated. That time about 5.5% is the average depletion happens. Then INR with then we've done another 10-15 years of also how it's going to be. So based on that scenario, we've seen is the good profitable business. Why not we go into the processing plant? That's the way thought process came in. When we put in the processing plant, in about 3 years, 100% all chickens are sold outside. Not in a single kilo is sold in India. Every year, about 15 to 16,000 tons of chicken is getting exported. The quality is well accepted. All those things it went well. That's a time we are able to see the pressure from Brazil because of the Brazil's production cost is much lower. Indian rupee also stable in that 3 years. Gradually the margins came down, the profitabilities are not there. That's the time we thought about what is the next. Joint venture partner also not comfortable because of the company started bleeding. Then gradually we shifted to the Indian market. fourth year, about 80% exposed, 20% domestic market like that. When we are going into the market, there is no HoReCa markets are not open, or retail markets also not open. Only the food service is the only solution within Indian market that we started supplying to KFCs or McDonald's, that like that. After 2 years, gradually we put in about 1,500 freezers. That's the time the modern retail is coming up. The retail stores, the kirana stores to departmental stores is coming up. We put up the many freezers in the stores and we kept the chicken. After some time only, we realized the people are not ready to pick up the chicken from the departmental stores. They are looking for chicken stores only. So within all these things, my joint venture partner also not comfortable because the company started losing after 3 years. Then after 10 years, continued to lose. So that time we parted because their interest is getting exported from India, not doing the business in India. Then we took that shares also taken over by us. Then we continued to invest on distribution channels to improve. One thing, what we missed is we are not to put that's a completely FMCG business. We are thought about is a chicken business. All our existing livelihood, more the people are there, we put in, but the things are not getting improved. All along we are losing. That went on for about 10 years. Then we took that's a time we realized about a chicken store is an area consumers, they want to buy the chicken. Then the processed chicken itself, separately we put up the stores. Now currently we are at around 300 plus stores we have across in South India. We are doing the good business in the chicken stores. The margins also is very decent, it's going very well. The control systems, process, everything is well defined. Then after we removed all the poultry people from this business and we taken the people from outside. All from FMCG background, we took up, even in poultry office also it should not be nearby. Then we moved our office to Bangalore. Then the new team is doing well in the last 3 years. They knows about how to do the things. The head of the business is also, he came from Coke. They don't know anything about chicken, but they don't know about how to do the business. Now currently our sales channels are, one is store to reach out to consumers. Then the second channel is anyway, still we are supplying through the departmental store also, but not business is not much. But there the eggs are going very well. Branded eggs are going well, but not the chicken. Then we have the HoReCa market, we are in the government tenders also for Aumi we are doing. Then food service also is another section it's doing. Now, recently we launched app-based order bookings and deliveries, direct-to-home business also. That very tiny, the small market, we are trying to stabilize the systems and process. Last 3 months is going on now. This is the way we are spreading. But anyway, future is the processing. We should not be expanding the live business again and again, but future is the processing, we have to step in furthermore.
Thank you. And I think let me move to dairy, which from the outside looks very attractive. From the inside has a lot of challenges. So 210 million tons of milk we produce. Half of it is the marketable surplus. Less than half of that marketable surplus is processed. And less than 1/4 of the process gets into value addition where the money is. With so much of stiff competition from cooperatives on pricing, Bhupinder, what people would like to know is what are the go-to-market strategies which players are adopting to protect their margin in liquid milk? What are the strategies with different distribution channels people are adopting for developing the value-added market, which looks very lucrative as compared to liquid milk? And then what are your experience in Creamline Dairy with these experiments, and what do you think is likely to work in future?
Great. So I think when I look at the dairy industry today, you have this huge volume flowing of liquid milk, and the margins are low. The margins are very variable. So, and like Vijay rightly said, there are different players playing different games in the market, and as a result, the pricing to the consumer. For example, this year we had a huge rise in all the raw material costs, which is primarily milk for us, but also all the inflation on fuel and which everybody else talked about today. And the increase in prices which we got is very low compared to what the price increase has been in the environment. Now, which means you can't even judge, I cannot judge my milk margin for 5 months down the line. 1 month, 2 months is the best visibility I seem to have. And I'm not too sure what I will be seeing in the near future. So now, on one side, in milk side of the business, the first thing we have to do, because you cannot ignore milk, it's the large part of that industry. It's 70 to 80% of that whole business is milk. And you have to make sure that the volume keeps increasing there. So on one side, you have to keep driving the volume throughput through the chain, because you get efficiencies of scale with the volume getting driven in that fashion. And then there is the value-added part, in which I include curd. Curd is a more profitable piece. It's a very well-entrenched piece. Curd, paneer, ghee, these are all well-entrenched categories. And then there are the new categories. So the strategies that, what I see which are succeeding, take a company like Hudson, which has probably done pretty well in the past many years. And what they have done is largely they have a separate businesses they run, like ice cream business, again a milk product business. And you segregate these businesses, run completely different route to markets and working in these businesses. If you try to run everything with liquid milk, they don't tally. One is a short shelf life, one is a long shelf life. So one thing which we are doing, and I think we've been doing it from a couple of years, and I have sort of coming from Coke, I mean, you can drive that same thinking forward, is basically we have completely segregated our long shelf life products. We are taking, in milk, we are largely south of India, and then the other products, we are taking it all across the country. And since they are long shelf life, you have to go through the FMCG route, and completely the same model, as I call it, like the Coke model. And you build and develop the markets, and you put sales people who are picking the orders in the market, you are investing in the market, and then branding, as this is the most important part, and marketing, which goes with it. So I think that's the part which you work upon and keep driving that. So that's completely segregating these business models and running them like separate companies within your company. So, and trying your best not to merge these companies. I even have reviews and all the workings with the teams independently. It's as if they are different companies, and they actually work like different companies. So, because in the past, if you really look at it, dairy companies have basically run the milk and curd business, and the rest was attendant on the side. I mean, whatever came. And largely run through the same RTM or the same route to market, as they say. And that's how it has been functioning. And I think that's where the dairy company need to step out of that situation and then completely segregate. And we have seen a lot of successes. And like I talked about Hudson, we guys are doing, I think, pretty good now with the long shelf life products and spreading it across the country and getting very, very high double-digit growth rates for many years now. So that's one part of the story. And then the other part is the milk part, which you have to continue to work on building scale. So, you cannot ignore your big chunk of the business which runs through the whole cycle. And there are irrational pricing strategies in different states, and you have to live with those. You find niches within them. So, for example, in Chennai, we found that you come into the tea stalls with a particular kind of milk which suits them. And then you service that, which a very big cooperative will not be able to manage that part of the business. So, and you can get a decent amount of volume coming out of that. So those kind of strategies are there. And lastly, it's the premium milk strategy. You've heard of Country Delight and many other such coming up. So we are also thinking in similar lines, where you try to premiumize milk, and it's all going to be all about branding and being able to sell a value to a consumer for which they're ready to pay for. And then setting up a whole supply chain which is completely independent of the normal liquid milk cycle to service them, because their expectations are different, their needs are different. So I think that's the main direction that we are taking this part in.
Thank you, Bhupinder. Now I'll talk about something very contemporary. In last 2-3 years, the landscape as far as serving the consumer and the offerings we are giving to the consumer has changed. So my last question to all the panelists, and please answer in 2-3 minutes each, is that what are the new formats in your industry which you are seeing? What is the startup ecosystem and some of the hits and misses you see in your areas of business? I'll start with Manoj.
Sir, when we talk about especially fisheries and especially in that shrimp farming, I see that we have a huge potential. When we talk about 1.2 million hectares of brackish water land in India, we have hardly explored only 8% of that. But the new statistics and data shows that especially the inland saline soils of Rajasthan and Haryana, Punjab, which is actually groundwater.
Manoj, what I want to know is your industry opening shops like the way you are opening? Any idea how these startups which are delivering chicken,
I'm
shrimp,
coming to that
etc.?
only, sir. I'm coming to that. Because what I mean to say that we have such a huge potential and it has never been explored. And when now the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana has come in 2018 with 20,050 crore, and a lot of money has been invested and motivated. But what is actually lacking for the entire development is we talk about resources, but we don't have a unified policy to allow that resources to the entrepreneurs. See, somebody wants to start a freshwater aquaculture or a brackish water, there is no policy provision that an entrepreneur can take up. When you coming to the startups in domestic market, when I have seen many companies have come up and now Malicious has shown a great example, then Farm to Fork, many companies are coming. But when it comes to getting into the main driver's seat, that when they talk about selling 1,000 rupees or 2,000 rupees a kilo, but on grassroots level, honestly, the effect has not yet come. They are trying, they are into process of doing that. A lot of startups are coming up, but the ground effect and the end benefit has not been yet shown very clearly. But I'm very hopeful that maybe sometimes I do see that, very sorry to say, that in our sector, a lot of startups, I think to be very honest, there are more fashionable terms. This thing, we numbers of startups, many states have signed so many lakhs and lakhs of crores of investment on paper, but ground reality is little different, and a lot of awareness has to come. Basically, belongs to the farming section, though we have a lot of money into this sector, but awareness, education has to be done more. So there is a great ray of hope because of the new technology when we talk about artificial intelligence and IoT and a lot of things. But when it comes to implement on the farmer side, for example, I'll tell you, when we talk about apps and IoT and AI, one company I worked with, few companies, when they came to my farm, then I have 100 ponds. Each and every parameter of the one pond, that which is 16 times, has to be put into the data. So he will give us all the analysis about that. But it is next to impossible to do that at the farming and to feed the data to app to have the analysis. And I have seen in 32 years, the age of the pond is more important to have the chronology of success to be understood. So as the age and one crop moves ahead, the age of the shrimp and fish pond differs. So what data of the first crop sometimes becomes irrelevant for the use in after 2-3 years. So all this thing has to be corrected, and I am very positive that science has a great answers to each and every problem. So and very soon our industry will also have a very nice aware shape.
So it's an area that's got a huge amount of investment is in this area. There's probably 25, 30, 40 billion dollars being invested into food and ag, new innovations and technologies that I see happening in our industry. When I made a move into a startup company 10 years ago, the amount of money in food and ag was dwarfed compared to how much is in today. And the type of things that, you start with the precision farming. We heard a little bit of that this morning, but the transparency that's happening between what a consumer wants to understand about their food and where it comes from and being able to almost trace it all the way back to who grew it is becoming a real, well, it's an opportunity for us with technology. So I see a lot of investment in digital technologies that are able to manage that transparency, to be able to take this crop with these special traits was grown and it's ended up in your finished product. The ability to create the customer experience with the apps, with the cooking recipes to go with the products that you spend all the time in the processing plant to try to specify your high margin specific products. How do you connect that value proposition very easily, you know, with the customers? So these are the type of technologies that are going on. Crop efficiencies and understanding that precision aspect is where a lot of big dollars are being spent. But I also think that, you know, as innovations continue in biologics and a lot of things that come into the nutritional side of the experience and how we, again, are able to explain that, manage it, and communicate with the customers, we're in a whole different world. You know, all of us, we talked a little bit about the alternative proteins that are forthcoming, cell-cultured meat, you know, these type of things that are making its way through the venture capital system because people view that the consumers want that. I still believe it's a small percentage of the overall meat consumption, but it is something that we have to be very real on, and it's a segment that's continuing to blossom in this area that we will watch. So, you know, listen, I'm all pro-innovation. I think this industry has gotten to where it has today because of innovation over the last 50 years, and I think innovation will take us into the future. And I believe there's a huge amount of creative opportunities out there that we need to figure out how to harness into our system and to take advantage of innovation and technology.
Son, today in India, nearly 20 of the app-based direct-to-home activities are happening. Out of that, 4 companies that have taken the lead of about 70 to 80% of the total volumes are sold by these 2 companies. One thing I'm not able to understand is they're burning a lot of cash. Their material cost accounts for about 75%. Even last year when I calculated their P&L, 450 crores is the size of the quantum they purchased. 75% is the material cost, but they lost 300 crores is the money lost. Overall, the revenues are 600 crores. Whether is it a 1 year or 2 year, last 3-4 years, the same thing is happening. How long is going to happen, I don't know. The material cost had to be shrink to 60% levels, but they're working on that. 25% they're doing the businesses of value-added products, not a processed chicken. They're doing well, but free cash flows, when it's going to be generated, is a question mark from my side. But they're doing well, they're able to reach out to the customer, the consumer preferences also, they're able to change well. Customer acquisitions are very good. We used to look into what is the P&L, they used to look into the customer acquisition cost. This is the way they operate. But I hope they will come up. In coming days, out of the 20, maybe 1 or 2, it may succeed well, but they will transform the market. That's my understanding.
So, Bhupender, you are from a very interesting area. Now, milk home delivery started several decades ago, and it is one of the most efficient delivery system in this country. COVID came and COVID went, but we never missed the milk packs outside our door in the morning. Every day milk was delivered, irrespective of what happened in the rest of the country. So when people talk about home delivery today, I think milk has done that for 5-6 decades right now. The other thing is that we also see multiple formats existing at the same time, because Hatson Story and our own Jalsi Milk Partners, etc., still have a very big traction as far as go-to-market is concerned. And now we have these app-based subscription models. So kindly run us through this gamut of go-to-market sales and distribution systems, and where do you see them going?
Right, so I would say that largely the home delivery model which you're referring to, which is we all have experienced in our own homes, the packet comes at 6 a.m. in the morning. Now that is an unorganized mechanism of working, but it works. That's the main thing. Now obviously all these people like Big Basket, Super Daily, many of these companies which I call consumer facing delivery systems, they came, and my sense is Super D stopped milk after some time. So again, the whole question is how do you manage the cost of the entire operation and whether you can take loss for how long. So I think that's what they went through, and but are they going away? I don't think so. I think they're going to be hanging around, experimenting, innovating, and someday it will come that they will get to some scale. So I think we should keep watching them. But have they solved the equation? I don't think so. That's one side of people. Then there are those people who are come with the subscription-based models. And I'll talk about those who came into the premium milk space. You know, Akshay Kalpa and Pride of Cows. So many of these people have come in that zone. And they charge 2x the price of the normal milk which you buy. Now, obviously, you have to sell this value to the consumer. And the consumer should believe and accept and pay for that kind of a value. And, you know, the Indian consumer is very Brahmanical, you know, at the end. He calculates a lot. So now, despite having the income, the main problem with these people is to build scale. So they struggle with scale. So, I mean, they won't be making losses like what Mr. Soundarajan was talking about, but they won't be making any profits. I mean, they were just, you know, waiting for some break even at some decent volume. And I think that's where they struggle. But I think, again, like I said, these are not going away. This premium milk and these pieces are not going away. They're going to be there. And there will be consumers who will be ready to buy this kind of stuff sooner or later. You have to keep trying, keep innovating, and, you know, reaching to that space. And to that extent, we also will be trying some thoughts in this area on premium milk. So that's, I think, where I would put this entire piece in. Yeah. The other part which Mr. Balaram talked about was, now again, when I say organized and unorganized, large part of the milk industry in India is through unorganized multi-brand agents. That's the structure. And I would say it was Hatson which decided to step out in a very big way out of that sort of cycle of going through this historical way of working through these agents, as we call them. And they started setting up their own parlors, and the parlor and with the delivery system. They literally pulled out of the agents and came to the parlors and started to sell directly from them. And, you know, you get a different consumer experience when you enter a parlor. And plus, they also service, they got cold refrigerated vans to do it to, you know, maintain quality. So they did those kind of work, and they, I would say, have succeeded to a lot of extent. We guys, most of the dairy companies, and especially us, for example, we have our own parlors we started setting up. But I would still say it is about 10 to 15% of the industry as of today. And it is still, I would say, more in the hands of the, I call it multi-brand agents. That's the structure today. But slowly the market is shifting towards where you control your distribution and where you are able to get the thing to the last point and give the right consumer experience. So I think that's where the industry is moving to.
Thank you, all panelists. I think it has been a very enlightening 75 minutes already. My observation is that we are, as far as animal protein foods are concerned, we are in transition. There are multiple models in multiple geographies. Depending on the evolution of markets, the cities are behaving very differently from the smaller cities and the villages. But I think this transition definitely is seeing a lot of innovation, which is the need of the hour. It is also seeing a lot of branding, whether it is a product branding or a distribution branding. So that also, I think we are on the right track. Now I open the forum to the audience. So please ask your question, your name, the company you have come from, and please be very precise what is your question. I think, and also let me know who should answer your question. And please don't ask me anything. Huh?
My question is primarily to Manoj and small measure to Mr. Soundarajan. In face of acute adversity, what kept you going?
Actually, I'm very passionate about my subject. That's definitely one. But what really gives me a lot of strength and energy to do that, because when I see 1 hectare of shrimp farming can employ and provide livelihood to 30, 40 people, and the development in Gujarat, what we have done, had transformed life of like a few lakh people. So that really gives energy, and that only gives some creativity that how we can continue their livelihood, because they have been working with us from last 15, 20 years. I think very simply, everything owes to that and everything dedicates to that. And that makes very challenging, and that also makes very happiness to work into that environment, and which provide livelihood to employment to so many coastal people.
Initially, survival made us to drive. That's the early stages. Then, stage 2 is the success. It made us to drive. Yes, and now the satisfaction of larger employment, farmers' enrichment, contribution to the industry. Then God allowed to serve to the people, because many capable people are around us. But even though through me, God is allowed to serve to the industry and farmers. That's a satisfaction.
I'm Pramod Kumar Singh from Proteon Pharmaceutical. My question is basically the conjuncture of BSY's question to Dr. Manoj Sharma, and especially to Dr. Manoj Sharma. When we have so much dependency on total shrimp production, 95% getting export and 5% consumed domestically, and I do understand that this 5% is basically non-exportable commodity which is getting consumed in India. When dependency is so high, what can we do in India to increase the consumption of this variety of protein so that our dependency on export can be reduced? No doubt exports gives us a lot of dollars, but at the same time, if there is an international crisis, the industry will doom. We have seen that in 2-3 times. 96 we saw that, 2004 we saw that, again 2010-11 we saw that. So what can be done? And a supplementary question to this, we have very good body in shrimp production, that is Empeda, who is working on making the revenue profitable model for the shrimp production. Can something be done on the same lines to propagate the consumption of shrimp in domestic market? Now when Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana has come, since you are into that board and Nili Kranti or Blue Revolution, what you have got it renewed by Rupalaji only in Gujarat, if something can be done even for the Indian market. Yeah, so that's what the question. Can something be done on that line so that in domestic consumption of shrimp also can be increased? Because if we look at the meat consumption, yeah.
Pramodji, thank you. Very simple, as everybody is saying, that we need a big awareness. There's a lack of awareness when it comes to shrimp related to its nutritional facts and the fresh versus frozen. I think India, for example, I can give you a very success story of Maggi. When somebody, a very big star, Remo Fernandez and Juhi Chawla came and gave an advertisement. I think this country needs that kind of thing. Now Maggi is becoming each and every household, every nukkad, pawn shop, every thela you will get a Maggi. I think when Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada was launched, I wish, don't take it otherwise, it's my wish that when Modi ji can say Har Ghar Tiranga, so everywhere there can be a Tiranga. So I wish if sometimes he says that to save the industry, Har Ghar Jinga. So I think within 2-3 days, 1 million tons of shrimp can be consumed chop. But still, jokes apart, but still I believe that cricket and film industry is the biggest religion driving our country. Somebody like Sachin Tendulkar or somebody like great Amitabh Bachchan, because I was very fortunate to be on the Kaun Banega Crorepati platform. I was the third Indian to reach the question. So I told him, sir, आप एक पैकेट भी रख के हाथ में बोलोगे कि ये खाने से मेरी तबीयत अच्छी है, तो हो सकता है पूरा इंडिया रातों रात खा जाएगा. So we need that kind of a mass campaign. And that's the only way out. No, sir. No, sir. Sir, आप मुझे बताइए. नहीं, this is a very good question. यहाँ से awareness चालू करते हैं. आप मुझे बताइए कि जब अपने देश के अंदर, when 2,000 rupees kilos fish can also be consumed, hilsa, we can eat an average mutton eater can take 680 to 750 rupees mutton. How 350 rupees kilo or 400 rupees kilo jinga can be costly protein, sir? You tell me. You answer myself. Because we have always designed that way. Pharma ka sabka, sorry, I should not talk anything about other marketing, but when we try to keep 70%, 80% margin on MRP to the vendors, to distributors and all, how is going to happen, sir?
We are seeing that from consumer side, not much has happened since then. Like the industry is not going as per our expectations when it comes to processed chicken consumption. So what do you see 5 years and 10 years from now, and what are the steps you are taking as well as the industry needs to take to grow this branded chicken?
Initially, when we started in 2002, 3 years very quite comfortable because 100% exports. Then after, when we moved into the domestic market, that time acceptance is not there. There is no customer or consumer for a processed meat. In about 10 years plus we struggled. All along we are losing. Then from the last 4-5 years, we are able to see the change in the two Horega markets are accepting. In India, Tier 1, Tier 2 cities, around 40-45 cities are in India. That's the only market, not the rural India as of now. This 40-45 cities, it consumes at around 40-50% of the total chicken. Out of the 50% of the chicken, 30% goes to Horega. So 15% of the market, as on today, it's open in India to accept the product. Out of the 15% also, 50% of the store only, the Horega only, they will buy only the 20-30 kilos a day consumption, not a 1 kilo, 2 kilo, 3 street side shops, it will not be. So market is overall, in India, 1,25,000 crores is the retail level sale. Out of that, processed chicken as on today at around 6,000 crores is the size of the business. We are operating in the quite narrowed area. So now only the Horega market accepts. That's point number one. Due to that, this area we can play well. But even though problem of comparing the live chicken, that's the biggest problem. Whenever the prices drops, they will go out of the processed chicken also. There is no loyalty in B2B business. So B2C business, it's a growing, but very slowly it's a growing as on today. Out of the total processed chicken, also 10-15% only is going to the consumer segment, where we have to build brands, consumer awareness, and the product should be not comparable to the live chicken. The chicken to be, within the chicken itself, we can do about 300 to 400 different products is possible. Through that, we have to do the value addition and the customer experience, the consumer experiences by way of product, packaging, distribution, all those things they have to feel. That's the area we have to work in the future. I'm thinking about in another 5 years of the time, overall, the 10%, if we are able to reach out the processed, is a great.
Balram, so this question is for Dan. I mean, you've come here after 11 years. So my question is, you've seen the US and you've been seeing India. In the US, the brands were built by the poultry companies and went forward, or brands were built by somebody who's outside the livestock and came backwards. I rest my question. I think you got my question. So where do you see happening in India, and your thoughts on that?
I think the answer was actually both. You know, there's the poultry companies created their brand, and when they did the processing cut up, they tailored their convenience and options to the consumer in that manner. That's what led to the further processing industry, because they were actually able to create the boneless, skinless breast became the first major component of how they marketed to the consumer. The back half of the bird was always the commodity, and everything was focused on boneless, skinless breast, on tenders, in creating that customer experience, how they packaged it, how they talked about cooking it, recipes, and building those brands. And it was really around the items. The back half of the bird actually, over time, when they figured out how to start marketing wings, you know, chicken wings to the restaurant chains, actually increased the value of the back half of the bird. So when you think about why further processing has emerged, when you cut it all up and you put that bird back together, you have more value per bird than you would if you just sold the whole bird. So it became very much a mindset of how did you develop the products, the drumsticks, those aspects, and then it's moved into the marinating, it's moved into some of the products you're even working on that I had the opportunity to look at. So it became a product development mentality that built onto the brand. So the brand was expanding the products that they offered. Okay, so, and there has been some companies who have made a business out of being a marketing organization that have bought the products and then they've added the value to them. So it's, my question to you is both, but fundamentally it started at the poultry processing company that made the decisions to start partitioning those, and then how did they sell them? Okay.
I have one question for Balram. The reason is you've been watching the stock market, startups, venture capital, angel money coming in. The exit for these people has been an IPO. And you've seen a lot of IPOs list very high, and retail investors have lost shirt and pant when they enter. SEC is becoming very stringent. The money from these people is going to dry up, Sundarajan sir. So the innovation is going to get choked. Can you comment on this? Where it's going to happen? Anything that you've seen in terms of SEC, you can't list until you have profitability for 3 years, and some thoughts on that?
I think all these people will go through a learning curve, and so will the investors. So my sense is that if 6 months ago getting a $50 million check was a cakewalk, it is almost impossible for startups to get that right now. So sanity has started coming. The second thing is that, which I saw in several startups which I'm associated with or mentoring, because these are techies. You know, they build a business model out of an app and other things. But there is a big thing which is happening now, that all these big institutional investors are telling them to recruit business people like you and me, who know how to do business, because only app cannot deliver everything. So that is the second change I am seeing. The third change which I am seeing is that the biggest discussion in all these startups, in their boards and advisory boards, is path to profitability, margin expansion. So at one time, say a year ago, everybody talked about top line, but multiples of top line valuations are over. Now it is path to profitability. So the sanity is coming. And I think several enthusiastic people with a lot of money have also learned their lessons from the startups which went public. So I'm saying this is a phase, first time I saw during 2000, 2001, when you were a small kid, that the dot-com boom, I've called you. So the dot-com boom, you know, and the survivors thrived. This is also there. And actually animal protein is not that kind of attraction, but you look at aggregation in agri-products. 150 startups are there which are playing in different parts of aggregation, because from the outside it looks so good, no? We have 100 million tons of wheat and everybody can aggregate, and you can build $1 billion business by just aggregating a few lakh tons, isn't it? But easier said than done. So I'm saying that all this will evolve, but there will be winners definitely, as Mr. Soundarajan said. I am very, very, the best part is that there is huge amount of data and learning will be generated with failures, which will help these companies which succeed. The second thing I must also tell you is that in this industry, particularly in any kind of food, never get your eyes off cost leadership, defined returns. And Dan can correct me that Tyson is big because they kept on gobbling businesses. And the issue is that they never talk about prices, they always talk about costs. And I think that all the things we have to do, but make sure that the cost model is sustainable. Yeah.
I think that's a huge takeaway on the aspect, because I still think people are still learning. Even the dot-com didn't teach, there's still money after concepts. I think at the end of the day, the point that you were trying to make is demonstrating the profitability. Tyson over time actually still are a chicken processing company, but they want to be viewed as a food company and probably could care less whether they were in the production side. but it all gets into the profitability of that business and the sustainability of that business. And I think that's a challenge for all of us as you look at both how do you create a marketing image and the customer experience, but how do we also improve the efficiency with the technologies and the innovation to drive the cost of our business down so that it can be profitable, because that's the only way it's sustainable.
Thank you, all of you. I think,
Just one more question, sir.
Chalo, one last question.
I am Vikas Gaur, working with Avitech Nutrition Private Limited. I am having a very simple question, sir, that if we see all the protein source prices, what my analysis is, when milk was 25 rupees, egg was 5 rupees. When pulses were 90, 80 rupees, egg was 5 rupees. Still egg is 5 rupees when all other prices indices are very high. So all table eggs are still 5 rupees. Why it is so in spite being a very rich source of protein? Why and how it is possible that the egg prices are so checked that they, every time I purchase
Got
at
it,
the price
got
of
it.
5
Who should
rupees.
answer this?
I request Mr. Sundarajan and you to answer the question.
Egg is a well accepted in the market. So consumer side, there is no resistance on consumptions. Only the excess production, it leads towards the control. Nobody is controlling the egg prices, but only the farmers are controlling the prices by way of excess production. That's my understanding.
So let me flip the answer a little. So the issue is that at 5 rupees, we were profitable 5 years ago. And 5 years later, at 5 or 5.50, we would be less profitable. So as a tribute to the industry, that most of these margin expansions have come from efficiency improvements, from productivity improvements, and from a lot of work which has been done in genetics and nutrition. So all said and done, in this industry, I think the producers will create surpluses and shortages, and that will be the determinant of profitability. But I still feel there is a long way to go in terms of efficiency improvement. One of the best ways of increasing per capita is to make it affordable, and I think that is one thing which we should keep on doing as an industry, because paying capacity for non-vegetarian foods will always be an issue. So I hope your question is answered. So thank you very much, and thank you very much organizers for organizing this, and thank you very much panelists, Manoj, Dan, Mr. Sundarajan and Bhupender. I think it was a very engaging session, and I'm really grateful and honored to be part of this group. Thank you.